Welcome back to Behind the Curtain. I'm your host, Chris Page. Back for another week. Couldn't do it without my boy John Cable. What's going on, brother?
Well, it's been a week. I'm glad to be back for another show on a topic that I enjoy. Because we do this because we love it, not because we're geniuses or scholars or even professionals, just because we like to do it.
For sure, we had a good show last week on the NWO, the early days of the
The early
NWO.
days,
For sure, we
the
got some.
pre-split NWO.
We had some comments. We got some likes. We got some subscribers. All that's good stuff. And we'll definitely be diving back into that for a part two on the NWO down the line.
Oh,
For
for sure.
sure. Oh yeah. Of course, to me, it all gets watered down after that initial run, but
It
they
does, but
they
there's still a lot of stuff that happens, and it's still important. So we're gonna cover it. We'll get to that.
yeah, it's arguably one of the best angles in professional wrestling, in some form or fashion, and in some circles. I felt like it would be kind of fun and interesting if we turned around this week and maybe did a little bit on the faction that kind of came together to counteract the NWO on the other side of the coin in 1997. Degeneration X is born. So what better way to pivot into to another topic than the faction that kind of along with Steve Austin and The Rock and several others were the blasting cap for the WWE. So I'm ready to jump in and talk DX, man.
Well, I'm here for it. I think the formation of DX was probably more nuanced than just the let's see what we can put up against the NWO. I think that the NWO actually had a lot to do with the formation of DX, but it was deeper than let's see what else we could put on TV against this. It was when the Click was around, and it was Hall and Nash and Triple H and Sean Waltman. Um, they had a lot. They had a lot of power pull, and they liked to use it. And when Hall and Nash went over to WCW with the NWO angle, it left Triple H and Sean in a little bit of a limbo as to kind of what to do. And then through the I guess the ending of the Click, really, after the separation of Hall and Nash from WWE, there's this upsurgence in popularity for Shawn Michaels and Triple H as they go into what would become Degeneration X. And at this point, we can't even call them Degeneration X yet because the name for it hasn't been solidified.
I completely agree. I think I think you're 100% correct. I think the NWO is definitely directly affecting the program content with the WWE at this point. I don't think we're not too far removed from the Vince McMahon infamous uh, insulting your intelligence speech with good guys versus bad guys. So this was to me it was a fun pivot, and keep in mind this 97. I'm probably 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, maybe 17. No, definitely 16. Um, so the mind frame that I had when I started seeing the content, right? And before they were named, obviously they were running around doing some crazy outlandish shit on television.
That's
Um,
a fact.
but it was working. Um,
It was absolutely because it was funny, and it wasn't what you expected to see from the show. It was something different. And I think, I wonder how much creative freedom Sean and Triple H had to really do whatever the hell on camera. We it notoriously Vince McMahon is known as a control freak. But how much did he just let these guys run off and do whatever it was they were going to do for this and make it into something? Like what do you think the percent cut on that was?
well, for context purposes, And back in this time, the WWE had Shawn, they had Brett, they had Stone Cold, who had not quite, you know, reached his popping point, but was definitely on
Yeah,
his
not
way.
yet.
Definitely on the way. You had The Rock, who again, not quite at the pop point, but on the way. But they only had a handful of what you would call marquee main eventers. The Undertaker was there, and I don't know if you would consider Mankind a full fledged main event talent at that point. Um,
He's probably the bottom end of the top tier.
my point is
Like
is
you'd
is
see him
is
in those angles, but yeah, it wasn't quite there yet.
well, my point is they had to do something. Like you had to. When you've got WCW running roughshod over you every week with
Especially with two of your biggest talents.
for sure. So chat me up. What do you remember about the formation of Degeneration X on television, and the name itself? Because if I'm not mistaken, Bret Hart's the one who called them a couple of degenerates.
Yep, that is correct. And they leaned into it so hard. I remember that promo they cut from the locker room, and I really got into their early days mostly because Rick Rude was there. Um, and you know me and my Rude mark. So seeing this formation of this stable that came out of what the Click used to be, like they were not as over the top, they were not as outlandish, they were not as just absolutely insane comedians in the Click. They were trying to be the power show and be important, and they were being the elites. Well, when they moved to into what DX would become, it wasn't about being elite, it was about having fun and making people look ridiculous. And I think that was what they really leaned into. So the formation of DX for me, I really liked Bret Hart. I really liked the Hart Foundation. British Bulldog was one of my favorites. And seeing the tension between Shawn Michaels and Bulldog early, and some of the other stuff going on between the Hart Foundation and what would become DX, that was really the building block where I jumped in. Well, I loved the early parts of the Click. You know, they were the heel guys, so you booed them, of course. No shit, that's their job. But when they became DX, it blurred that line of what's a heel and what's a face, because it didn't really matter so much who was the good guy and who was the bad guy. It was, do you find this funny?
What about while this is building and building, it just takes me back to October of '97, where when Brett labeled them degenerates, and now we're definitely at this point on the road to Montreal, which was November Survivor Series, the infamous Montreal Screwjob. Um, when Shawn picked up the belt. And at that point he was
Which
rocking
was
the
a screw job in its own right.
oh for sure. Um, Brett was gone, and that's when they really kicked it into the next gear. And for me, and for this episode, I really want to run through like WrestleMania of '98, which is the rise of Steve Austin. Um, and then we'll pick this episode back up down the line. Those definitive times from December, January, February, and March, like DX to me got like red hot, and that's where like I started to shift my attention on Monday nights to the WWE.
Well, like you said earlier, when DX started and it was really just the Click still, they didn't have a lot of names. And with the Hart Foundation kind of falling apart after the screw job, they really didn't have a lot of names. Really, what was left was basically Undertaker, Triple H, Shawn Michaels. The Nation hadn't even started yet. So those guys were around, but their angle for the Nation hadn't even really picked up. So realistically, you had Shawn and Undertaker going at each other for a while, and you had Vince and Triple H going at each other for a little while. and you had the many side characters kind of feuding with other mini bosses. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
And
I remember the December pay per view, which was entitled "In Your House DX." That featured Shawn and Ken Shamrock, as well as I believe who did Trips take on that night? That wasn't Slaughter. It was
no,
Slaughter.
it wasn't Slaughter. Maybe it was.
It was. Um, they both come out on the winning end, but something that's looming in the background and a piece of DX that initially when it was the trifecta is Chyna. When was the last time that you saw a big bodybuilder female like just wrecking fucking house?
Never. China was a phenomenal athlete, and while there was a lot of controversy around her and her character, the fact of the matter was that she showed that women could compete with men. And while a lot of that conversation was around her physique and how big she was, it wasn't ever a question. Like I guess there were some questions in the storylines about, oh, a woman's gonna come and take whatever, but she proved them all wrong when she took the Intercontinental title as the first chick.
Way down the line of things to come. Um, I did not take Ken Shamrock as a credible threat to Shawn back then, um, but I was surprised to see that he went over via DQ. Um, very, to me that's interesting booking if Shawn just picked up the belt, but the shenanigans pick up because here shortly we've got the emergence of the New Age Outlaws.
Which was actually when DX was China, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and the New Age Outlaws. That was my favorite period in time. A lot of people think that the best iteration was them later, but I actually like this formation. Like I guess it was DX2.
I was all about it, and what to me, while Shawn and Hunter were definitely pushing the envelope on what you can do on television and what you can't. I mean,
Every week.
stuff in your pants and it just
There was
mooning.
miles of crude humor.
Oh yeah, um, and then you add in the Outlaws, and I wasn't really big fans of the Outlaws initially. It wasn't until they had got into the stuff with DX that I really got a hard laugh out of them in a good way because they were so entertaining. Road Dogg and mainly the Road Dogg, because he just didn't give a shit, and you could tell. And he still did his thing. Was phenomenal on the microphone. Um, and I go back to their tag title match with Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack. As I'm a big Terry Funk mark, and I'm also a big Cactus Jack mark. I thought the work that they did with them was tremendous. There were so many things that happened along the way with that little program that helped. To me, it elevated the Outlaws uh, in a time where they needed to be elevated.
One of the things I always liked about them as a tag team is their work ethic. They put in a lot of hard work. Road Dogg, especially in the ring, like a lot of people don't give him much credit, but that man knows how to bump. Like he can take shots all day long and does phenomenal bump work. Like his in-ring acumen, the both of them, Billy and Road Dogg both are really good workers. They may not be, exactly what you'd see in a main event caliber or for a world championship, but they are definitely good workers and they make solid stories happen. And that's as a booker, that's definitely what you're looking for in talent that you want to bring into the show and make a part of the spectacle of the main event scene.
Well, the Royal Rumble, I know I got ahead with the Outlaw stuff. With the Royal Rumble, saw Austin and Taker in the casket match, and I believe this is the night where Shawn hurts his back. Um, Goes over, and this is also the night that Steve Austin officially arrives. He wins the Royal Rumble. We know that we're getting Shawn and Austin at Mania, which is to me at that point was a pretty big fucking deal because the momentum is starting to shift. It hasn't shifted yet, but it's starting to within the Monday Night Wars. What did you think about Taker and Shawn from the Rumble?
I like. So I was an Austin fan way back, but before then, it was always the Undertaker.
The Royal Rumble was next on deck in '98. This featured Shawn and Taker on top, and it was in a casket match. It also obviously it had the Royal Rumble, where this is the infamous one where Austin picks up the W, stamps his ticket to WrestleMania, and so we know where we're going, right? Like that. This to me is kind of where business started picking up. The momentum was starting to shift. It hadn't quite shifted yet within the war, the Monday Night War. It was getting there. And again, I was really paying attention to WWE over WCW. And I think part of that was because at this point in time, the NWO has been running for over a year and a couple months. And it's just kind of, to me, filtering out a little bit. Because this is now where you've got multiple people that probably didn't deserve to be there. And on this side of the coin and on this channel, DX is just really getting started. They double down and go all in October, and it's still fresh. And you have Austin, who wasn't a Stone Cold Steve Austin fan in this era if you're watching professional wrestling?
I mean, even before this era, if you're watching professional wrestling, all the way back to Hollywood Blonde days, if you want.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Stunning Steve is always the man. But he had never gotten the push, and never gotten the notoriety. But now he's starting to get it. He's starting, you know what I mean? The machine is finally starting to get behind him.
Well, I mean, it was either move it or lose it with him, really. Like, he had talent. You either start promoting him on the show he's on now, or you don't. Like, he had push when he was in WCW, some at least, and now you've got him in a bigger company doing Monday Night Wars, and you've got to use the talent that you have.
I'm all for it. I thought that Austin and Shawn as a kid was going to be a phenomenal main event. Dampered by the back injury. This is where, I don't know. There are multiple and conflicting stories out there about it. I'm not going to get into it. I just know what I see on television is that this guy's out. His back is kind of busted off of a backdrop onto the coffin. And, it ain't ballet. So it is what it is. Going into No Way Out, we start getting into the Cactus Jack, Chainsaw Charlie angle with the Outlaws. We start getting into Triple H, and Owen Hart is really, really starting to heat up a little bit. And obviously the focus is going to be on Austin and Shawn. That is a ready-made main event. If all of the
Absolutely.
If all of the players are there. And what I feel like was a terrible move for Vince and the WWE. With Shawn pulling out, there's obviously no bigger star than your world champion, right? Like, that's why he's your world champion. Same can be said for
Right.
The female, the ladies out there, the women. If you're the women's champion on Raw or SmackDown or an AEW or New Japan or GCW or wherever. Like you're the flag bearer for the brand. Savio fucking Vega. And it's not that I hate or despise Savio. I do not. But show me where he fits in this equation.
It doesn't.
Reliable talent, absolutely. Has he been with you for several years at this point? Absolutely. But isn't he the job guy for Los Boricuas right now?
Yes.
So
sadly,
what? I thankfully didn't order
but
the
this
event because if I
is a long.
did, I would be
It's a long
demanding.
tenured history of WWE to like really run their talent into the ground when they should be doing different things with them.
Well, as a fan, thankfully I didn't order the event. I would be demanding a refund. Um, it was still an entertaining match for what it was. Not having Shawn didn't really hurt it because at this point Austin is on the rise, and obviously at this point too, Owen Hart is on the rise. Owen was always a really really good talent, and I always felt like never got the opportunity that he deserved. His match with Brett at WrestleMania 10, fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, no, that was a great match.
Opened the show. Was just I don't know how else to describe it.
Technically wonderful.
I think it was WrestleMania 10. I hope it was 10.
Well, I'm sure someone in the comments will tell you.
And I also felt like Owen had the tools at this point. Had if Austin wasn't in the picture with Montreal and what had transpired, that could also have been a story for Owen. And I feel like if Austin wasn't in the picture, Owen Hart's in that slot. And what does that do for business if you really thought about it?
I mean, it would definitely change the landscape, but then, man, I don't know, because going into the Attitude Era, this whole buildup really makes the difference. And that's a good question. What if Owen Hart was still in that slot? What if? It's that's a big rabbit hole.
It is. But it's just one to pose because Owen's just one of those guys that I think everybody knew was great. But he's one of those cats that you realized it after he was gone. In some cases,
you don't come out of the dungeon without talent.
That's a good goddamn point.
I mean, you don't.
The 8-man tag, like I said, was what it was. All eyes were geared towards WrestleMania. This is where the shenanigans really started picking up. And obviously, this is heading into what is going to be one of the biggest WrestleManias of all time because Iron Mike Tyson is going to be playing a pivotal role at WrestleMania and a little bit throughout the story. They get Mike Tyson on television. What do you remember about that?
This is not the first time that WWE has gone big celebrity. And I felt like this was another one of those, and it was. It was a way to get different eyeballs on your product. Now, granted, at this time, Tyson is like in the prime of his career. Like he is maybe not the prime of his career, but he's still absolutely in the minds of the fans watching at home. Getting him on a show like this is big business for money. And I think that's all Vince was really worried about. But putting him in this angle and building it the way they built it to have him join DX really put a spin on what was going to happen at the pay-per-view.
The road to WrestleMania. Um, Man, I remember I was so fucking excited. I was ready for this, man. I felt like, to me, at this point in time as a kid, and watching wrestling and being a diehard fan, like I don't think I was more excited for a Mania than this one because I've got Shawn and Austin, I got Triple H, and I've got Owen, I've got the Outlaws, and I've got Cactus Jack, Chainsaw Charlie. And to me, I didn't need anything else. My
You were just a kid in a candy
I
store.
sure was. I sure was because I didn't know what was going to happen. What was the deal? And with the Mike Tyson being in the mix, that storyline leading up to it, Tyson joins DX and they do the public workout, and Tyson and DX tie Austin up in the ropes, and instead of beating him, they kiss him on his head. It's the initial meeting with Austin and Tyson. It was kind of like the shove heard around the world. What I remember about
Absolutely.
that, listen, let me tell you what I remember. What I remember more than the shove heard around the world is apparently Austin shoved Tyson or shoved Tyson so hard, or Tyson's entourage in the mix of moving or what have you. Somebody dropped a fistful of fucking money, and you see on TV the scuffle and scuttlebug is going on in the ring, and they're trying to separate it, but you got one guy over here from Tyson's entourage reaching down picking up money. like bills.
Like, oops, I gotta go get this.
Exactly. Oopsie. But it was so good. And the understories and the undercard, with Owen and Triple H. Triple H was a star. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't until his road with DX that I started to take him kind of seriously. And I kind of feel like while he had some moments along the way, IC title runs as the Blue Blood Hunter Hearst Helmsley, playing that character to, some other minor stuff. Like I feel like this was his moment to break out, to
So
elevate himself. What's that?
I have a spicy take about that.
Shoot, go.
My favorite iteration of Triple H was actually when he was Jean Paul Levesque and he was coming out in the white puffy shirts.
Yeah, you like that?
And playing the piano and Melina being his valet. Like that was my favorite era of him.
Sable was the valet. Melina was with Johnny Nitro.
Oh, with Gold Dust. No. Before Gold Dust.
Oh, Melina. Oh,
yeah.
His wife, Marlena. You were thinking Marlena.
Yes, Marlena. Yes. Before that,
again, John.
Nuh-uh.
There's a sound effect right there for you.
Bullshit.
Marlena was the stage name of Terry Reynolds. Let's talk about what brought us to the dance. WrestleMania. DX is, kind of riding a pretty, high momentum. There was a lot of uncertainty surrounding the main event, which we'll kind of get to, whether or not Shawn was going to do business or not. And, the Undertaker sitting at Gorilla, waiting to see what was going to happen, to all kinds of, shenanigans along the way. But, John, let's talk about Triple H and Owen. I believe that this one was for the European Championship. That European title, brother. Such a prestigious championship. Am I right?
Well, I mean, so I can feel the sarcasm laced in there, but realistically, if you look at the number of people that have held that belt, there is a who's who roster of who would then go on to be world champ on the European title.
Okay. No, I'm just not a fan of it.
So,
I felt like
I
felt like it wasn't I'm not gonna say utilized correctly. This may be a saucy take. Of all the belts, it just wasn't my favorite. Now, I enjoyed it when certain people had it, like in this saucy take, William Regal. I
I
thoroughly
loved
enjoyed
when Regal had the belt,
exactly like see
but I'm
that
a Regal mark anyway.
exactly. But in that accord, yes. Um, in this particular situation, I feel like Triple H had it because he was a part of Degeneration X. That means that he had a belt. That means that the Outlaws had the tag titles, and Shawn had the world belt at this point.
It was a
Uh,
consolidation of power.
yeah, so I get it. In that regard, it makes sense. But did either of them really need it? No, I don't think so. Um,
I think in this era, though, the champions are the ones that get pushed, and if you don't have a belt or you're not competing for a belt, what do you get?
a pat on the back and an attaboy.
And a check, I guess. Sure.
Well, what was you thinking about Triple H and Owen?
I think that Owen is definitely the better worker out of the two. But in this angle, they've traded the belt back and forth, and they've come into this with DX holding all the power. And I think that while uh, it wasn't an instant classic, it was a good match.
It was what it was for me. I felt like that they would have better matches or had a couple of better matches along the way.
Yeah, I think that they had at least had one better match than that before this one, for sure.
But at the end of the day, they came out and did what they needed to do. I'm here for it. I thought it was now as a kid, I thought it was the best thing ever. Chyna's involvement, et cetera, that led to the end result. The one that I was most looking forward to, well, I'm not going to say that because it was the second most look forward to was the tag title match. I love a good.
Well, that's because you like. That's because you like Funk and Mankind.
I love a good Terry Funk brawl.
That's a good way to describe it too.
I wasn't a fan of the Chainsaw Charlie gimmick. But, I didn't know who it was the first night on Raw. Again, I'm 15, 16 years old. Like a week or so later, that's when I realized it was Funk, and I went, "Oh shit, okay, I can get into this a little bit more." But I wish that they would have let him come in as Terry Funk, because Terry Funk and Cactus Jack, I felt like that would have been like but it still was that kind of sensation because Chainsaw Charlie is Terry Funk, and we're still getting the Funker.
But it's different. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
It'd have been like if they had paired Dude Love with Cactus or with Terry Funk in a match. I mean, yeah, it is them, but it's not though.
That would just be funny. That
I
would just be
mean,
funny. Dumpster match, man. The rules were to put one team in the dumpster. Leading into this, they had did the good dumpster spot on a Raw, where the Outlaws had put them in a dumpster and wheeled them off the side of the stage, and JR made several good calls in that angle, but that's also, you could see some of the stuff that was packed in the dumpster to help cushion the falls, but they
those TV angles in the '90s, man. Those TV angles in the '90s.
yeah. But at the end of the day, it wasn't bad. It wasn't terrible at all. It didn't take away from anything because it was still fucking two people in a dumpster getting pushed off of a stage, landing on a concrete floor. There's not a whole lot you can do to protect yourself there. You're kind of at the mercy of whatever the fuck is about to happen.
Brace for impact.
Yeah. Shout out.
That's about it.
Both of those guys for that. What happens here is Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack, and I love the finish of this match. Like, they got him in a dumpster. It was the wrong fucking dumpster. And that was kind of the loophole. But to get that, at least for that night, new tag team champions. it kind of felt like, to me, I was like, my fucking childhood hero. I loved watching Terry Funk. I loved his shit with Ric Flair back in the NWA, and I loved his stuff. I've watched his stuff with his brother Teeman. Um, it, his title run. I've caught a couple of matches on YouTube when he was running with the NWA strap. Just good shit. Obviously, I've seen all of his stuff in ECW. Like, just a fucking legend. Let's just say that. Sorry.
Absolutely.
But what did you think about this dumpster match and obviously the finish of New Champions?
I mean, so you see it as maybe DX is losing their touch. Maybe they're losing their power structure. And for the night, you can at least feel happy about it.
Yeah. Heading into the main event, it was, that was the big story. Obviously, coming out of WrestleMania, what we now know, right? What Shawn maybe not wanting to do business. The
When does he want to do business?
At this point, probably next to never. I
mean, you already have him. You have him earlier, like the year before or so. Screw the Bulldog out of a match by going to Vince and getting a match changed over. You see the Montreal screw job because he doesn't want to play the way that they want to put it. Or the original storyline. There's a lot of controversy about it, whatever. But you see this repeatedly in Shawn Michaels' career here where he doesn't want to do things that make him look bad, or he doesn't want to take losses, or he doesn't want to not have the power or the say-so or the whatever. You see this a lot. So knowing that, Undertaker's standing up at the end of the ramp, you wonder about that.
I mean, I don't know if I would want to walk back through that curtain and knowing that
and not have done the job.
Yeah, not with Taker standing right there in front of me. He goes out. He still has a good match. There are several moments, and again, internet wasn't necessarily a big thing, at least in my household at this time. But watching the match, like I could see. I don't know if it was Shawn selling or if it was legit pain. I could, he was on the top rope. He was crouching down, and you could just see him like kind of cringe as he kind of forced himself to stand up, and it may have been the elbow drop spot. But he got through it, and he did business, and I was the element to me wasn't necessarily if Shawn was going to lose the belt, because I figured that was what was going to happen. It was, how is it going to happen? What was Mike Tyson's involvement going to be? What was happening there?
Well, that was the question.
And
because like you said, you wonder, all right, so we figure he's going to lose the belt, but how's it going to go down? Especially with Tyson in his corner being the ref. You're like, okay, how is this going to play out? And I didn't expect what happened. I don't know about anybody else, but I damn sure didn't in my head be like, oh, this is exactly what's going to go down.
Yeah, stunner. Tyson comes in, kind of makes a pretty fast fucking 3 count. Gets up. And,
yeah, a little bit.
I mean, you could just tell he was excited. He was just so excited. He went 1, 2, 3. And it was over, done. The post match was pretty solid. With Tyson decking Shawn and ripping off the DX T-shirt and having the Austin 316 T-shirt on. It was, what better way to close out Mania than that? And on the flip side of that, where DX went from here. Like, to me, you said DX Part 2 with the Outlaws. I would still consider this Part 1. And that's just because it's the foundation being built and being laid for what would be the next incarnation of Degeneration X. This was,
I can see that.
this was the night that Shawn walked away for a hot little minute. This is also the infamous press conference that he walked in and made a scene and walked out, kicked the door on his way out or something. I think Austin was on stage. All kinds of stuff going on. Now we know now that he was, I don't through his own admission, medicating, and had
Well, I mean,
injuries.
how good was his insurance at this time with the injuries he had taken in the last year?
He was a workhorse, man. He was a workhorse.
Well, in this time period, like that was kind of the go-to. Like the guys didn't go to the doctor; they got pilled up, and it was like backroom medicals. It wasn't even real medicals.
I think that this is a good place to end part one on DX. I feel because we're on the cusp of new member showing up from.
Well, it restructures as soon as Triple H ejects Shawn Michaels from DX, and he takes a hiatus. The Degeneration X faction really changes. They go in I mean, they're doing the same thing they've been doing, but they go in a heel direction, and it's not the way it was, but it is. But this definitely sets them up for the new era of DX.
And that's when the tide starts to shift, right? When WWE's fixing to take control. This is a great time and was a great time to be a fucking professional wrestling fan. Regardless of what your poison was, you had it on both channels. You had it on TNT and on USA.
Well, I think this is the point where really the Attitude Era starts.
Yeah, we're that blasting cap. I'm content with that. What say you?
Well, I like where we made it so far. It's been a little bit of a slog for me, but I'm getting here, and we're having fun doing the thing. When we get back to this, we'll be touching into the new era of DX and forming into the Attitude Era, where they take on a lot of different talent and some new factions rise up. There's lots of legs on this story to still cover later on. So if you guys have enjoyed it so far, guys, don't forget to go down below, click the like and subscribe button, and drop those massive savage elbows on that ring bell over there to get our notifications.
Next week, side note, this is a CCP podcasting production, not Over the Top.
Nice.
Over the Top is another network that you can.
So we'll cut that part out too.
No, that'll stay in. Because that link's down below too. If you want to go down and take a look and take a like and subscribe over there for other content. Next week, I do want to go ahead and put it out there. I've been talking to John, and by way of all the comments that were dished out for the Smoky Mountain Wrestling episode, and wanting to do a follow up. Well, we will, and we will do that next week. When we talk about the Smoky Mountain Wrestling World Heavyweight Championship. John, I think that's a good show to go back into some territory stuff and discuss the good old days of Smoky Mountain.
I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you guys out there are as well.
All right. Well, we will see you next week. Don't forget, like John said, give it a like, give it a subscribe. CCP Podcasting Production. We'll see you next week.